Good morning.
Good morning.
We are starting a new study this morning, and I feel it's an important study. And so we're going to, we're videotaping these just like we do the sermons, and we'll put them up on YouTube as well. So we want to make sure we take our break this morning in between. We are working, you can pray for that to work. We're working on being more and more timely so that we can get done everything that God would have us do in the morning, or everything that we have laid out to do. Although I will say that, if the Spirit's moving in one area or more, then we're going to go with that and not worry about the time. Just want everybody to know that.
Awesome.
So we're starting Small Church Essentials, okay? And so this week's lesson, and I don't know if we're going to get it done, this is really the introduction. So I feel each one of these are important, and so if we don't get it done, we'll finish it up next week, and then we'll just move right on into the first actual lesson, and we're just going to cover it all as time permits. First, let me say, and I believe this is really important because I think it's ethical for one and Christ-like for another. These are not lessons that I came up with on my own, okay? I didn't dream this material up myself, nor was I inspired by the Lord to write this material out. I received a book called Small Church Essentials by Carl Vaders, and it really opened my eyes. I did some research on him, and I read the book. So I've taken his book, and I have adapted it, or I should say I'm in the process, I haven't done the whole book yet, but I'm in the process of adapting it into these lessons. Now, what that means is that some of this is his, and I want to make sure he gets credit for it. I don't want to take credit for what he did. The problem is it's all kind of jumbled together, okay? And so at this point, and if it changes, I'll let you know, but at this point, I would say 80% of it is his, and 20% of it is mine, and all of it is the Lord's. Okay? To be honest, this is actually a more time-consuming process than if you did a lesson yourself, or working up a lesson from scratch. So over the next couple of months, I really desire your prayers for good time management on my part. These lessons are going to be different than what we've done or what we've been doing. Of course, we really haven't been doing lessons for a while because of COVID. But they will be different than what we've done in the past because they will be more of a lecture type than I normally do. But I do want to tell you this, anytime you want to input something, you want to say something, you want to add something, you have a question about something, raise your hand. I want to involve you and engage you in this process as we go along. In fact, in the bulletin, if you didn't get one, they're in the back. In the bulletin, there's a little insert, and if you look at it, it'll say something about questions about the sermon, notes about the sermon, one thing you got out of it, and if you flip it over, it's got the same thing for the Bible study. Okay, so that maybe, as we go along, you'll think of something, you write it down, follow up, talk to me this week about it, call me, email me, message me, whatever you want to do, but let's work this study throughout the week, if possible, okay? So your comments and your input are really, really desirable, so that I'm not just up here talking for 30 minutes, because this is a study, not a sermon. They are different, okay? These lessons are going to be about what it means to be a healthy, small church. So there will not be as much scripture as we normally have, but there will be scripture from time to time. Believe me, we will move from this to the inviter lessons that I still feel are important, and then into some good, solid biblical lessons. The truth is, I've got so many things in my head that I want to do here that we're good to go for a while, okay? But I feel in many ways, as a church, we are starting over. And before we go forward, we need to know where we are and who we are, or what we are, okay? We are a small church. Truthfully, we are a very small church. We are a tiny church. Now, technically, we have about the same number of people here as we did when I first came here. But our attendance is actually far less. It's probably about 50% less than when I first came here. When I first came, one thing about the church, when it was small, there was like 10 people here. I would say 95% of those people were here on every Sunday morning, even for Bible study, most of them, okay? So we're a small church. Now, many people believe, though, that if you're a small church, you're a failed church. Okay? That's just kind of the mindset they have. A lot of people have that. Because many people, if not most people, they equate success when it comes to church. They equate success with large and failure with small. Truthfully, we kind of equate everything that way, okay, for the most part, right? If your business is growing, if it's a big business, then it's a real success, right? If it's a real small business, maybe not. People don't see it as much of a success. How many of us like to have big bank accounts or small bank accounts, right?
3 or 4.
You know, right? I mean, so it's a natural way we think that when it comes to institutions, you might say, or things such as that, big
Not with
seems.
people.
What's that? Not with people. No, we don't want to be big people. We don't necessarily want to be small people either, though. We want to be healthy people, and that's kind of key here. Okay. Like many people, I believed for far too long that growth was measured mostly in numbers, and that becoming healthy meant the church would inevitably become bigger. This is not necessarily true. Okay? Someone that used to go here once told me this: a healthy church grows. Healthy sheep produce more sheep. Now this makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah.
It sounds right. I mean, right? I mean, it sounds right. And I agreed with them. But let me ask you this question. If a man and a woman are healthy and they are 70 years old, would you say, well, if you're healthy, you should be having babies? No. Why? Because it doesn't, you can be healthy and not reproduce. That's what I'm trying to say. What I should have said in response to this person was this: how healthy are you? How many sheep have you produced? Because the implication, and it's often the implication in churches. I just gave a guy went, he's preaching today in Utah, okay, at a church in view of a call. And so I gave him some advice yesterday.
Is that right?
Yeah. I gave him a warning too, because somebody said he met with some of the people there, and one of them basically said, "We don't want to change anything." And I said, "Be careful, okay? Because growth in and of itself brings about change, okay?" But anyway, the reality is when most people say things like that, what they mean is, if the church is healthy, it'll reproduce sheep, which means the pastor will reproduce the sheep. Okay? But the pastor's the shepherd. He's still a sheep, yes, but he's the shepherd. Okay? So I should have asked that person, do you consider yourself healthy? Yes. Then how many have you reproduced? Okay? It is a responsibility of the church, from the pastor all the way back to Jesse in the back, to reproduce. Not just a responsibility of one person. So the purpose of these lessons are not how small churches are better than big churches. I hear that from some people. Oh, small churches are better. Big churches, I hear, they don't preach the truth, or they wouldn't be big. Okay? Well, then you're going to have to answer. You're going to have to explain to me the Book of Acts, where 3,000 souls were added to the church in one day. You're going to have to explain to me some of these things. Okay?
That wasn't literal. That was figurative. It felt like.
It felt like, yeah. Small churches are not better than big churches, because they're not. Neither are big churches better than small churches, okay? The purpose of these lessons, they're not about wanting our church to stay small. And it's not about settling for less because we are small. The point in these lessons and the purpose, and this is why it's important for everybody, I believe, who is a member of this church and who wants to take this serving God in the church, in the local church, seriously, to be here. These lessons are about wanting our small church, this church, Loma Rica Baptist Church, to be a great church of the Lord, no matter what her size is. The goal of most pastors of small churches, and I will raise my hand and admit that I are a part of that at one time, is how to turn them into big churches. Okay? When we began to grow here, one of my first mistakes, and believe me, I've made many mistakes along the way, okay, was basically, if it meant more people coming, let's do it. Okay? There is nothing wrong with wanting more people to come here. There is something wrong with adjusting and adapting the church to every different person that comes through the door, because after a while, what I found out is you can't do that. Not only can you not do it, you can't sustain it, okay? And then the people who come because they got what they wanted will leave as soon as they don't get what they want, okay? And that's not commitment. So the goal of most pastors of small churches are how to turn them into big churches. The hard truth is that many are prejudicial when it comes to small churches. They feel that small churches are not as good as big churches. They think that if a church is small, it's because of some spiritual deficiency. These are all false. Don't get me wrong, they could be true. But it's also just as likely that it's not true. And those things are also possible that a large church could be guilty of the same things. In the end, we must shift our thinking about being a small church. We must not assume that small means more spiritual. Okay? We must not assume that small means broken. We must not assume that we have to stay small. We must not assume, though, that there's also something wrong if we stay small. What is wrong with a small church? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Well, technically nothing, depending on why it's small, okay? But they actually did a survey and found out here the top 6 reasons that are the top 6 things that people say are wrong with small churches, why they don't like small churches, okay? Number 1, they say they are inward focused. Number 2, they are threatened by change. Number 3, they are filled with petty infighting and jealousies. Number 4, they do not reach their communities. Number 5, they are poorly managed. And number 6, they are small because they settle for less. There's only one problem with those 6 things. You know what it is?
They're wrong.
Well, they're not wrong.
You could apply to a large church.
There you go. Okay? They're wrong if you say they apply to all small churches. That's true. But what John said is the key point there, is that these things can apply to large churches and medium-sized churches, okay? Small churches do not have exclusive rights to things that are wrong with churches. The truth is there is something wrong with every single church because they are built with fallible individuals who are saved but still struggle with sin. And without a doubt, every church, and I would even say our church, as small as she is, this is a great possibility. There is some wolves mixed in with sheep. There are some lost. There's some weeds mixed in with the wheat. Okay, and so every church is going to have its problem. Those are not descriptions of a small church. Those are descriptions of an unhealthy church, regardless of size. These are not problems of size. These are problems of sickness. And I want to tell you something. Our church has had almost every one of these at one time and still has some of them right now. Okay? We're overachieving. Okay? But not because we were small. Okay? Let me ask you these questions. Is it possible for a small church to be the following? Friendly.
Yeah.
It's possible. Absolutely. Outward looking. Missional means we're actively doing evangelism in one form or another. Innovative, generous, worshipful. The answer is yes. Yes, it's absolutely possible. And just because the church is small doesn't mean they're not those things. And just because the church is big, it doesn't mean they are. And while our church may not look like all those things yet, that does not mean we can't get there. Just like we have been, as I got real honest with God, and I looked at the list of things that could be wrong with a small church, or with any church, we should say. And I realized we have been guilty of some of these, if not all of them at one point or another, and we have a couple we struggle with right now. We've also been pretty much the other two. We've been those things pretty much at one time or another, and we are several of them right now. I believe we can be the kind of church that is extremely healthy. We can get there. Listen, I'm gonna lay this out for you. I don't want to pastor a church that wants to be small. Okay? Because that's not the commission that was given us. Jesus didn't say, go therefore and build small churches. He also didn't say, go therefore and build big churches. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't want to pastor a small church. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't want to pastor a church that just wants to be small. In other words, I don't want to pastor a church that small is their goal. Okay? If small are the results, then that's okay. I also don't want to pastor a church though that wants to grow just for the sake of growth. I don't want to fill church pews. I don't want to fill seats. I got an email just a few weeks ago, and the heading on the email was a church growth thing. I get them all the time. But it was how to put butts in the seats. That was and I thought, I don't want that, okay? That's not what I want as a pastor. I want to pastor a healthy church that is the size the Lord would have her be. And when we filter everything through the church growth lens, then we miss a lot. We should not abandon the pursuit of church growth, but we should not embrace it at the expense of everything else. Okay? In the end, the size of the church is not up to us. Okay, this is good. I think we might get through the introduction this morning. The size of the church is not up to us. Matthew 16:18. Anybody know what that says? Okay, you can look it up. I'm going to read it to you anyway. Matthew 16:18. Jesus says, after Peter identifies and worships Jesus and says, you're the Christ, you're the Messiah, you're the Son of God, basically. Jesus says this. He's not saying this about Peter, as some people teach. He's saying this about Peter's confession. Okay? He's saying it about himself, literally. He says, and I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock, the foundation, the solid foundation of your confession in me as Christ, as Messiah, Son of God, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overpower it. Acts 2:47, second chapter of Acts. Amazing script, amazing chapter in the Bible.
Isn't that a group name?
It is a group name too. I'm telling you what, second chapter of Acts is one of those chapters, to me, you should be able to read that chapter and not get goosebumps or something, okay? Acts 2:47, talking about the church. They were praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. Every day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Every day. But who added it? The Lord. Okay? So, the size of the church, is it up to us? No. It's up to God. Okay? But, pause, comma. He expects us to do our part. Okay? We cannot be like the unemployed Christian who prays for work and then sits back in his recliner eating bonbons and watching Oprah and expects somebody to come knock on the door and offer him a job. Okay? That person has to go out and hit the pavement, as we used to say, knock on doors. Today it might be go online and fill out applications and make phone calls. And he has to do his part, trusting that God will provide for him the job God would have him do. So God expects, the growth of the church is up to God, but he expects us to do our part. Let's back up in verse 47, Acts 2:47. That was great, right? The Lord added to their number daily. But let's back up to verse 46. Every day they, the church, devoted themselves to meeting together in the temple and broke bread from house to house. They ate their food with joyful and sincere hearts. Okay? And then let's also not forget, we talked, Jesus said he'd build his church, right? But Matthew 28:19 through 20, the last words Jesus said to his church, okay, were this. Go therefore, Matthew 28:19 and 20. Most of you are very familiar with this, but go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything I have commanded you, and remember I am with you always to the end of the age. So, we know what God's part is in this, right? God's going to do the adding and the building, okay? But he expects us to do our part. So what is our part in Matthew 28:19 through 20? I came up with 4 parts that we have to do in Matthew 28:19 through 20. Go,
Make disciples.
make disciples. I think that's important. It's really, really, really important. He didn't say make converts or decisions, okay? He said make disciples. A lot of churches are good at evangelism, not nearly as many are good at discipleship, okay? That's going to be a thrust in the future for our church, okay? Go ahead, there's 2 others at least.
Baptize them
Baptize them
and teach them.
and teach them.
There's actually 5.
What's that? What's the other one you got?
Remember.
And remember what's been taught. Okay, so he said, this is why I want your input. Come up with more than I did. Okay.
Actually, remember he's with us.
Remember what? Oh, remember he's with us? Okay. Yeah, that's a good thing. We're not lone rangers doing this, okay? We're not off the reservation, okay? We are a part of the team, okay? And Jesus is going with us. Remember, he's with us. So what's our part in Acts 2:46? I came up with 4 parts there. They don't seem quite as much, but they were. Because it was after they did these things that it said God added to the church. I'll give you the first one. They were devoted to one another.
Everything.
Okay? What's that?
Everything.
Every day. That would be the next one. I said they were also devoted to meeting together. They met every day. Now, we don't meet every day. But if we are going to be the church, if we're going to call ourselves a church, we need to be devoted to meeting when the church meets. That's all. We need to arrange our schedules, do what we can. Listen, things happen. Life happens. Sometimes, age happens even, right?
Oh.
Some people, you can't drive at night. There's this. There's a multitude of good, solid reasons why people can't come together. But mostly, people don't come together because of excuses. Okay? And this says they were devoted to one another, devoted to meeting together. And when they met together, what did they do?
They broke bread.
They fellowshiped, okay? This was a relational thing. They really were brothers and sisters. They interacted with one another. And the last thing they had, something they had, I should say.
Joyful and humble attitude.
Joyful and humble attitudes, or joyful and sincere hearts, as some say. What's that?
Glad, sincere hearts.
Glad and sincere hearts. In other words, you know what that meant? They loved being together. They loved one another. They loved God's word. They loved being the church. So,
They also did something else.
what they do? Tell me.
Praise God.
And they praised God. They worshipped.
Because all the other stuff is just the neighborhood pop-up.
Okay, we're going to try to wrap this up and give John time to go get David, assuming you have to today. Okay, or you get to today. Okay, but I got a little bit more to say. So which one of these are we doing? Okay, you don't have to answer that, because which one of these, let's bring it down personal, because that's really, it's at the personal level that this is at. The church has grown one person at a time, okay? Which one of these are you doing? Why are we not doing some or all of these? What can we do about it? These are all questions we need to consider. In many ways, that is the purpose of these lessons. How can we be an effective church no matter what size we are? I believe 110% Loma Rica Baptist Church can be a very, very effective church no matter her size. If we grow, and I'm praying every day that we do, we want to be effective. And if we don't, we want to be effective. Okay? I'm asking you to join me in this journey, in this commitment, in this. I'm asking you to join me in prayer. I'm asking you to join me by taking notes in these lessons. Okay? I'm asking you you can call me and say, listen, you said something about this, I don't remember, can you tell me, because I want to pray about that. I'm asking you to be engaged in what we're doing here. Join me in going over your notes during the week and reaching out to me with thoughts, ideas, concerns, and questions. Maybe these questions I ask, which one of these are we doing, which one of these are you doing, why are we not doing some or all of these, what can we do about it? Maybe this week in your prayer time over this, God will reveal something to you. You can say, hey, we can start doing this. Okay? Join me as we explore small church essentials. Okay? Next week, we are going to go into lesson 1, which has several parts. Lesson 1 is small does not equal broken. In this, we're going to talk about the reality that about pastoring a small church, the embracing of the small church without settling for less than God's best, and that small churches in and of themselves are not a problem or virtue or an excuse. Okay? They're just small, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay? We want to embrace who we are for God's glory. Any comment before we end this, take a quick break?
You said something, it's been a while, but it stuck with me because it was so profound. It was about how we're supposed to be in the world and not of the world. So the boat has to be in the water, but when the boat starts taking on water, there's a problem.
Right.
In America especially, we have become a nation of isolation. This happened long before COVID, where you stayed out of each other's business. You don't bother me, I won't bother you. And the family started to fracture, and it bled over into the church. And I think that in America is a big reason why we don't do these things anymore. Because when I was growing up, the whole church, with few exceptions, would go out to lunch after church and continue what we had at the building. Or Sunday night, the whole church, with few exceptions, would go out for pizza, and we'd continue whatever we had at church that night. And I don't know any church that still does stuff like that. And I think it's because we've allowed ourselves to be isolated, to bicker and nitpick, and basically the church in America is antisocial.
Well, that's because that's the way our society has gone. But we, as the church, and Doug, you want to get ready to turn this off? Just hit that same button in just a second. The church has to remember we are the church wherever we go. And we have to act like the church. And we need to fellowship with one another like the church. Church needs to become to be a priority again in the life of believers, is what it really comes down to. If I was to say, listen, I got $1 million for you, okay? And all you have to do is show up at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning for 52 weeks in a row. At the end of the 52 weeks, you get $1 million. Do you know that people would do that? They would rearrange their life. They would schedule their vacations. They would schedule their work. If work said you got to commit that day, they would go, you know what, I really can't. I have the commitment. Why? Because they would rearrange their life for that. Well, the reality is what the church does when she gathers together, you cannot put a price tag on that. Okay? And again, I don't want to be dogmatic. I don't want to be legalistic or any of that kind of stuff, because that doesn't do anybody any good. But if we really love the church, we would rearrange our lives to be there when she's there. I love my wife, so what do? My whole life changed when I got married, right? I came home to our house, not to my house. Okay, we had a family, and my responsibility was to my family. Okay, so anyway, but thanks for your attention, and your participation. Dean is really right, and so we'll pick up again next week. Thank you.